A winter storm is tracking toward Canada right now, and what started as a coastal disturbance 48 hours ago has rapidly intensified into something far more dangerous. As I'm recording this on February 23, 2026, a bomb cyclone is slamming the Atlantic provinces with blizzard conditions, 40 centimeters of snow, and hurricane-force wind gusts. But that's just the beginning. Behind this system, another wave of Arctic air is plunging south, and the forecast models are showing something that has meteorologists extremely concerned. This pattern is not breaking, it's reinforcing. Right now, at this very moment, millions of Canadians are under weather warnings. St. John's, Newfoundland, is being buried under what will become the snowiest February on record. Halifax has activated emergency operations. The Trans-Canada Highway is closed in multiple locations, and the cold air mass building over the prairies is already pushing temperatures to -40 with the wind chill. This is not a typical winter storm. This is a serious threat that's about to affect the entire eastern half of Canada. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from and what conditions look like in your area. Are you getting snow? Extreme cold? Are you on the West Coast wondering what all the fuss is about? I want to hear from you because what's happening across Canada right now is creating one of the most dramatic weather contrasts this country has ever seen. Let me tell you exactly what's happening at this moment. Environment Canada issued a winter storm warning at 5:03 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time this morning for Halifax Metro and the entire Nova Scotia coastline. The warning states 15 to 25 centimeters of snow, locally higher amounts possible. Northeast wind gusts will hit 70 kilometers per hour across the province. In exposed coastal areas, gusts could reach 90. The snow started arriving Monday morning and will continue through early Tuesday. Here's the dangerous part that most people aren't paying attention to. Along the Atlantic coast, this snow may transition to rain Monday evening during high tide. Wave heights are forecast at 5 to 7 meters. Storm surge could push water levels above the highest astronomical tide. That means coastal flooding is expected in Shelburne, Queens, Lunenburg, and Halifax counties during tonight's high tide cycle. Nova Scotia Power already activated its Emergency Operations Center. They learned their lesson from the January 19th storm when 140,000 customers lost power. They're pre-positioning crews right now because they know what's coming. When you combine heavy wet snow with 90 km/h wind gusts, power lines don't survive. Trees weighted down with snow snap. Infrastructure fails. And in February in Nova Scotia, that means people lose heat in the middle of a blizzard. New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island are under weather alerts across every single county. 20 to 30 centimeters combined from the weekend system that just passed and this incoming nor'easter. But it's not just the snow. Daytime highs in parts of New Brunswick are dropping to near -20 degrees Celsius after the storm passes. That's the Arctic air I mentioned. It's sitting over Quebec right now, and it's about to sweep into the Maritimes behind this coastal storm. Newfoundland is facing something that hasn't happened in over a century. St. John's has already received more than 100 centimeters in the past week alone. Paradise, Newfoundland recorded 144.8 centimeters in that same 7-day period. Think about what that means. Nearly 1.5 meters of snow in 1 week. And now this nor'easter is bringing another 35 to 50 centimeters, starting today. Meteorologist Rodney Barney stated on the record yesterday that this will be, and I'm quoting, pretty much a guarantee at this point, the snowiest February St. John's has ever recorded. The previous record dates back to 1921, over a century ago, and it's about to fall. Wind gusts in Newfoundland during the peak of this storm are forecast to hit 100 km/h. Visibility will drop to near zero in blowing snow. Snowfall rates during the heaviest bands could reach 5 to 8 centimeters per hour. If you're trying to clear your driveway and it's snowing 8 centimeters every single hour, you can't keep up. The snow wins, and that's exactly what's happening across Newfoundland right now. CBC meteorologist Ashley Brauweiler described the previous storm by saying, "It certainly feels like it's going to go on forever, and it will." Well, she was right about that storm, and this one is following the same playbook. But let me zoom out and show you the bigger picture of what's happening across the entire country right now. because the storm hitting Atlantic Canada is just one piece of a much larger and more dangerous setup. As of this morning, Toronto is sitting at -1.5 degrees Celsius with freezing drizzle and 3-kilometer visibility. But that mild temperature is deceptive. It's about to change. Monday night, the temperature in Toronto drops to -14. Ottawa hits -17. And there's another potential snow system coming Wednesday into Thursday. Environment Canada Senior Warning Preparedness Meteorologist Gerald Cheng stated this morning that there is no relief in sight. The cold temperatures are expected to stick around through the rest of February. He said, and I'm quoting directly, "We're looking at a prolonged period of below normal temperatures with multiple opportunities for additional snowfall." Ontario has already been hammered beyond recognition this winter. Toronto's total snowfall through early February hit 132 centimeters. That's 236% of normal. The biggest snowfall anomaly in the entire country. But the immediate threat right now is what's developing for later this week. The models are showing another low-pressure system tracking through the Great Lakes Wednesday into Thursday. It's too early to pin down exact totals, but the signal is there for another 10 to 20 centimeters across southern Ontario. That would be the 6th significant snow event in the GTA since January 23rd. Eastern Ontario just got hit Friday night into Saturday. 10 to 20 centimeters fell across the Ottawa Valley. Some areas received 25. Snowfall rates hit 5 centimeters per hour during the Friday evening commute. If you were driving home from work in Ottawa Friday night, you experienced what Environment Canada meteorologist Jason Shepherd warned about back on February 1st. He said, "Stay tuned. We're only in the first week of February, so we've got another 6 to 8 weeks to go yet." We're now 3 weeks past that statement. And he was absolutely right. Quebec is dealing with extreme cold right now. Montreal is sitting at -11 with a wind chill of -20 as of this morning. They could see 5 to 15 centimeters near the US border from the outer bands of this nor'easter tracking up the coast. But the bigger story in Quebec is what happened over the weekend. Montreal's aging infrastructure is failing under the sustained stress of this winter. On January 25th, over 20,000 customers lost power when the Hampstead substation failed. That substation has been in service since 1955. Its replacement isn't scheduled until 2029. During the most recent cold snap, over 13,000 Hydro-Quebec customers lost power in Côte-Saint-Luc. The Canadian Red Cross had to open emergency shelters in the middle of February. If you're finding this information valuable and you want to stay ahead of what's coming next, hit that like button and share this video with anyone in Canada who needs to know about this developing threat. Because what I'm about to tell you about the prairies and the Arctic air mass building there is going to shock you. The Prairie provinces are about to get hit with another round of dangerous cold. As of this morning, extreme cold warnings are active for southeastern Manitoba. Steinbach is facing daytime highs of -26 degrees Celsius. Wind chill in the morning is -39. Overnight tonight, it drops to -49. At -49 wind chill, exposed skin can get frostbite in less than 5 minutes. Winnipeg isn't forecast to rise above -10 until Thursday, February 26th. This is the same Arctic air mass that's going to sweep into Ontario and Quebec later this week. It's going to push into the Maritimes behind the coastal storm, and it's going to create one of the most dangerous cold outbreaks Canada has seen all winter. Saskatchewan just went through this. The February 17th to 18th storm that hit the prairies was a monster system. Prudhomme received 50 centimeters. Prince Albert got 35. Saskatoon and Regina both saw 19 centimeters with freezing rain extending south. Wind gusts of 70 to 90 kilometers per hour created whiteout conditions across the entire southern half of the province. Saskatchewan's highway hotline logged 2.5 million visits in 36 hours. Half the province's highways were under travel, not recommended advisories. One person was killed in a crash involving 3 semi-trailers near Broadview. Environment Canada meteorologist Chris Stammers described that system perfectly. He said, "This isn't really your classic Alberta clipper, it's more of what we call a Montana low. These are notorious heavy snowfall producers. They're very slow moving, so they give prolonged periods of snow. That's exactly what happened. The storm sat over Saskatchewan for nearly 36 hours, dumping snow continuously. Now the cold that followed that storm is what's tracking east, and it's intensifying. Alberta is seeing temperatures at the Edmonton airport approach -38 degrees Celsius. Calgary logged 143 collision incidents in a 16-hour window during the last major snow event on February 17th. The RCMP issued a rare tow ban on Highway 2. When they issue a tow ban, that means conditions are so bad that even tow trucks cannot safely operate. That's how extreme these conditions become. But here's what makes the current setup so dangerous. It's not just one storm, it's a conveyor belt of systems. The nor'easter hitting Atlantic Canada today will exit Tuesday. Behind it, Arctic air floods in. By Wednesday, another system develops over the Great Lakes. That brings more snow to Ontario and Quebec. By the weekend, models are showing yet another potential coastal storm. This pattern is locked in a loop. High pressure over Greenland, low pressure over eastern Canada. Storm after storm tracking up the coast or through the Great Lakes. And behind each one, Arctic air crashes south. Before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to this channel with notifications turned on. This winter storm pattern is continuing to evolve, and dangerous weather is forecast through at least the end of February into early March. If you want updates on what's coming next, you need to be subscribed. Let me talk about what's happening in the territories right now, because the numbers there are truly extreme. On February 21st, just 2 days ago, Eureka, Nunavut recorded -50.4 degrees Celsius. That broke the previous record of -50 set in 1964. Grise Fiord hit -43.4, smashing a record from 2013. Yellowknife dropped to -44.3. These are temperatures where the moisture in your breath instantly freezes, where metal becomes brittle, where exposed skin develops frostbite in under 5 minutes. Yukon hasn't recovered from the December cold snap. Braeburn recorded -55.7 degrees Celsius on December 23rd. That's the lowest temperature measured in Canada in 50 years. Ross River and Faro endured sustained lows of -50 to -55 for days. Water delivery stopped. Fuel delivery stopped. Residents had to melt snow for dishwater. The power grid hit an all-time peak demand of 123 megawatts against a maximum capacity of roughly 140. The system came within 17 megawatts of complete failure. Energy officials warned of possible rolling blackouts. That Arctic air is what's feeding these systems. Every storm that develops taps into that cold reservoir sitting over northern Canada. And as long as the blocking pattern stays locked, that cold air has nowhere to go except south. Now, let me show you the complete opposite extreme happening simultaneously in the same country. British Columbia's coastal areas are experiencing something that hasn't happened in over 40 years. Vancouver may record its first completely snow-free winter since 1982 to 1983. 0 centimeters at Vancouver International Airport through the entire season so far. On February 5th, Bella Bella hit 19.5 degrees Celsius. Tatlayoko Lake reached 18.1, both all-time February records. Cherry blossoms were blooming in North Vancouver by January 19th. An Environment Canada meteorologist called it very abnormal. But even within BC, the story splits. The south coast is warm and dry. The interior has been cold and dry. Kamloops received only 32.4 centimeters versus its 63-centimeter average. The Okanagan got just 14 centimeters against its normal of 61.6, but the mountains tell a different story. Provincial snowpack sits at 107% of normal. Some regions, like the Central Coast, hit 160%. Lake Louise reported 5.2 meters of December snowfall, the most ever recorded there. This creates a serious problem that most people aren't thinking about. When all that mountain snowpack melts in spring, the BC River Forecast Center is warning of increased hazard for spring snowmelt-related flooding. The Fraser River, the Thompson, the Okanagan all face elevated flood risk if the melt happens quickly. And with La Niña rapidly transitioning to neutral conditions and potentially El Niño by summer, the spring weather pattern could shift abruptly. Rapid warming after a winter with above-normal snowpack equals flooding. It's not a maybe, it's a when. But that's a spring problem. The immediate threat is what's happening right now. Let me walk you through what the next 72 hours look like across Canada, because this is where the forecast gets critical. For Atlantic Canada, today through Tuesday is the peak of the nor'easter. St. John's will see continuous snow through Monday night, with the heaviest bands producing 5 to 8 centimeters per hour. Total accumulations will reach 35 to 50 centimeters on top of what's already on the ground. Wind gusts peak Monday afternoon and evening at 90 to 100 kilometers per hour. Power outages are likely. Travel will be impossible. Schools are already closed across the entire Avalon Peninsula for Tuesday. Halifax and the Nova Scotia South Shore will see 25 to 40 centimeters, with the heaviest amounts along the coast. Wind gusts to 90 kilometers per hour in exposed areas. The transition to rain along the immediate coast Monday evening creates a dangerous flooding situation during high tide. Waves of 5 to 7 meters combined with storm surge could push water into coastal properties. Shelburne, Lunenburg, and Halifax counties are at highest risk. New Brunswick and PEI will see 20 to 30 centimeters, with the northern counties getting the higher totals. Behind the storm, temperatures crash Tuesday night. Lows drop to -15 to -25 across the region. For Quebec and Ontario, Monday remains cold with scattered flurries. Montreal sees 5 to 15 centimeters Monday night into Tuesday from the outer circulation of the coastal storm. Toronto stays dry Monday, but temperatures drop sharply Monday night to -14. Wednesday into Thursday, a new system develops. This one tracks through the Great Lakes. Current model consensus shows 10 to 20 centimeters for southern Ontario. Ottawa could see 15 to 25. It's too early for exact numbers, but the signal is clear. Another significant snow event for eastern Ontario and southern Quebec, Wednesday night into Thursday. For the prairies, the story is extreme cold. Manitoba stays under extreme cold warnings through Wednesday, wind chills of -40 to -49. Saskatchewan sees similar conditions. Alberta's coldest air arrives Tuesday, with Edmonton potentially hitting -38 at the airport. This is life-threatening cold. At these temperatures, frostbite happens in minutes. Hypothermia can set in within 30 minutes of exposure without proper clothing. British Columbia stays mild on the coast. Vancouver sees temperatures of 8 to 12 degrees with rain. The interior and northeastern regions face winter storm warnings, with another 15 to 30 centimeters possible in the mountains. The territories remain in deep freeze. Yellowknife doesn't rise above -35 through the rest of the week. Wind chills approach -45 to -50 inches, exposed areas. Now, let me explain why this particular storm is becoming such a serious threat. It's the combination of factors. First, the nor'easter itself is a rapidly intensifying system. The central pressure dropped 24 millibars in 24 hours. That's the definition of bombogenesis, explosive intensification. When a storm intensifies that quickly, it taps into more moisture, produces heavier precipitation rates, and generates stronger winds. Second, this storm is hitting regions that have already been buried. St. John's had 328 centimeters of snow on the ground before this storm even started. Paradise had over 144 centimeters fall in the previous week. You can't keep adding 40 to 50 centimeters on top of that without serious consequences. Roofs start failing. Snow removal becomes impossible. Infrastructure breaks down. Third, the cold air following the storm is dangerously intense. We're not talking about typical February cold. We're talking about -40 to -49 wind chills across the prairies, spreading into Ontario and Quebec by Wednesday. That's Arctic outbreak cold. That's the kind of cold that kills people who aren't prepared. Fourth, the pattern is persistent. This isn't one storm and done. It's storm after storm. The atmospheric blocking pattern that's causing this is locked in place. High pressure over Greenland. Polar vortex disrupted and displaced over North America. Jet stream highly amplified. Every model, the ECMWF, the GFS, the Canadian models, they all show this pattern continuing through the end of February and likely into early March. Let me put some real numbers on why this is dangerous beyond just being uncomfortable. At wind chills of -40, exposed skin can develop frostbite in 5 to 10 minutes. At -45 to -49, that window drops to under 5 minutes. Environment. Canada's wind chill index marks -28 as the threshold where frostbite risk begins. Large portions of Canada have spent weeks below that threshold, and this week's cold outbreak will push millions more people into that danger zone. But cold isn't the only killer. A Canadian Medical Association journal study found that heavy snowfall of 20 centimeters or more is associated with a 16% increase in heart attack hospitalizations and a 34% increase in heart attack deaths among snow. Shoveling snow raises your heart rate to 97% of predicted maximum within 10 minutes. St. John's is getting 40 to 50 centimeters today. Halifax is getting 25 to 40. Southern Ontario is looking at another 10 to 20 Wednesday. Every single one of those events puts people at cardiac risk. Carbon monoxide poisoning spikes during winter storms. When power goes out and people try to heat their homes with generators, camp stoves, or other improvised methods, CO builds up. During Winter Storm Fern in January, one Nashville hospital treated over 40 children for carbon monoxide poisoning. In Montreal, when over 20,000 customers lost power during the substation failure, a woman was found dead in her home. The Consumer Product Safety Commission issued 2 separate CO warnings this winter because the risk is that high. Infrastructure fails in cascading ways during extreme weather. Power grids come under stress from peak heating demand. When lines go down from heavy snow and wind, repairs are delayed by dangerous conditions. Water mains freeze and burst when temperatures plunge. The Pimicikamak Cree Nation in Manitoba learned this the hardest way possible. A 300-meter power line snapped in December. Over 4,000 people had to be evacuated. More than 200 homes became unlivable from burst pipes, flooding, and sewage backup. The water treatment plant was severely damaged. Repairs are estimated to take months. One infrastructure failure in extreme cold destroyed an entire community's housing stock. Road salt becomes ineffective below -10 degrees Celsius. Most heat pumps lose significant performance below -10, and many cannot function at -30 to -40. Natural gas demand spikes. In Alberta, every 10-degree drop below zero increases gas use by 40% and electricity use by 8% in an average home. Saskatchewan set a peak consumption record of 1.72 petajoules in a single day during the January cold snap. These are system-level stresses that create vulnerability. Vulnerable populations face compounding risks that most people don't think about. Toronto is sheltering approximately 12,000 people nightly, with 1,275 additional winter warming spaces activated. Montreal added 530 warming center spaces, but advocates say demand is insurmountable. When you're homeless in -30 wind chill and the warming centers are full, you're facing a life-or-death situation measured in hours. An elder in a Northern Ontario fly-in First Nation was found outside in the cold during this winter and could not be revived. The economic impact of this storm and the winter pattern overall is staggering. Since January 1st, over 6,100 flights have been disrupted across Canada, affecting more than 560,000 passengers. On February 24th alone, Toronto Pearson saw 151 cancellations from ripple effects of the current coastal storm. During the February 17th to 18th Prairie storm, Calgary Airport recorded 82 cancellations and 88 delays. On February 20th, Pearson, Calgary, and Vancouver combined for 587 flight disruptions in a single day. Winter Storm Fern, the massive system from January 23rd to 27th, caused an estimated $105 to $115 billion in total damage and economic losses across North America. Insured losses reached at least $1 billion. A separate December ice storm caused $342 million in insured Canadian damage. Canada's total severe weather-insured losses surpassed $8 billion in 2024 for the first time ever. Winter 2025 to 2026 is on track to significantly add to that total. Municipal snow removal budgets are exhausted. Toronto has contracted additional equipment. Montreal is running 2 4-hour operations. Halifax is prioritizing arterial routes and emergency access because they simply cannot keep up with the volume of snow. Every storm costs millions in removal operations alone. Never mind the economic disruption from closed businesses, canceled flights, and halted supply chains. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because the forecast for the next 2 weeks shows this pattern continuing, and you need to stay updated on what's coming. Let me explain the meteorological mechanism that's keeping this pattern locked, because understanding why helps you understand how long it's going to last. In early February 2026, a major stratospheric sudden warming event occurred. Temperatures in the stratosphere, about 30 kilometers above Earth's surface, jumped 40 to 50 degrees Celsius above normal. This caused the polar vortex to split into 2 cores. One stayed over Siberia. The other displaced directly over North America. When the polar vortex splits and displaces, it disrupts the normal westerly flow of the jet stream. Instead of flowing smoothly west to east in a relatively straight pattern, the jet stream becomes highly amplified. It develops deep troughs and tall ridges. These patterns can lock in place for weeks. A blocking high-pressure system parked itself over Greenland. That block prevents weather systems from moving east out into the Atlantic the way they normally would. Instead, storms track north along the eastern seaboard or develop over the Great Lakes and stall. Meanwhile, the tropospheric polar vortex, the one at our level of the atmosphere, has multiple lobes. One of those lobes is sitting over Hudson Bay and eastern Canada. That brings Arctic air directly south. And as long as the stratospheric disruption persists and the blocking pattern holds, this configuration stays locked. La Niña was active this winter, which historically gives a 60 to 75% probability of producing a stratospheric sudden warming event. The quasi-biennial oscillation was in its easterly phase, which nearly doubles the odds of a disrupted vortex. Combined, these factors created a 90% probability of a cold winter for eastern North America, according to one analysis. The pattern played out exactly as forecast. The question everyone wants answered is, when does this break? Based on historical SSW events, it typically takes 4 to 6 weeks for the polar vortex to recover and re-establish normal westerly circulation. The early February event puts the earliest recovery timeline in mid to late March. Atmospheric scientist Judah Cohen's February 17th analysis projected one more stretched polar vortex event in early March that would return cold to eastern Canada. Severe weather Europe's spring forecast shows above normal snowfall continuing over southern Canada through March. Environment Canada senior climatologist David Phillips stated on February 7th that it's very, very rare to get 4 months in a row with the same kind of cold conditions. He said spring is not going to rush to spring this year. That was 3 weeks ago. Nothing has changed. If anything, the pattern has reinforced itself. There are 2 potential braking mechanisms. First, La Niña is rapidly dissolving. NOAA gives a 60% chance of transition to ENSO neutral by February through April, with El Niño potentially developing by summer. That removes one atmospheric driver. Second, the stratospheric polar vortex must recover, but that's a 4 to 6 week process minimum. We're about 3 weeks into that timeline. Another 2 to 3 weeks puts us into mid-March. The transition won't be gradual and gentle. When blocking patterns finally break down, they often do so abruptly. That can trigger rapid temperature swings, intense storm systems, and highly unstable weather. March could be more volatile than February in terms of day-to-day weather whiplash. And then there's the spring flood threat. Eastern Canada is buried under record snowpack. Toronto sits at 236% of normal. St. John's is tracking to the snowiest February ever recorded. Ottawa, Montreal, Halifax, all above normal. BC's mountains are at 107%, with some regions at 160%. The prairies have significant snowpack. When all that melts, where does it go? The BC River Forecast Centre has already issued elevated flood hazard warnings for the spring melt season. The Red River Basin in Manitoba faces minor to isolated moderate flooding, according to preliminary outlooks. Eastern Canada's rivers, from the Ottawa to St. Lawrence tributaries to Newfoundland's coastal streams, all face elevated risk if the melt happens quickly. And if the transition from winter to spring is abrupt, which the forecast suggests it might be, rapid temperature rises can trigger rapid melt events. That's when flooding happens. Here's what you need to do right now if you're in the path of this storm, or the cold air behind it. If you're in Atlantic Canada, this is the time to finalize preparations. Stock up on essentials now if you haven't already. Charge all devices. Have backup heating options ready. Know where you can go if you lose power. Bring pets inside. Clear storm drains near your property if coastal flooding is a risk in your area. Fill bathtubs with water for toilet flushing in case water service is interrupted. Have flashlights and batteries ready. Do not plan on traveling Monday night or Tuesday morning. If you're in Ontario or Quebec, prepare for the Wednesday-Thursday system. It's coming. Exact totals aren't certain yet, but the signal is strong for another significant snow event. Make sure your vehicle has a full tank, an emergency kit with blankets, food, water, and a shovel. Clear your roof if you've had significant accumulation. Check on elderly neighbors. Have a plan for school closures. If you're in the prairies, understand that the extreme cold arriving Tuesday and Wednesday is life-threatening. -40 to -49 wind chill is not something to take lightly. Limit outdoor exposure. Cover all skin if you must go outside. Check on vulnerable people. Bring pets inside. Let taps drip to prevent frozen pipes. Know the signs of hypothermia and frostbite. Have backup heating plans if power fails. This winter storm is becoming a serious threat because it's not happening in isolation. It's the latest in a sequence of events driven by a persistent atmospheric pattern, the nor'easter hitting today, the Arctic outbreak following behind it, the next Great Lakes system Wednesday. These are all pieces of the same locked weather regime, and that regime shows no signs of breaking until at least early March. The dangerous part is the sustained nature of this. Communities get hit, try to recover, and get hit again before they've finished clearing from the last event. Infrastructure weakens with each successive storm. People get fatigued, mistakes happen, and that's when the real tragedies occur. Someone goes outside to clear snow for the 5th time in a week and has a heart attack. Someone's home loses power, and they try to heat it with a generator in the garage, and CO builds up. Someone's elderly relative gets snowed in and can't get to medication. This is why meteorologists are calling this winter setup dangerous. It's not just about snow totals or cold temperatures in isolation. It's about the cumulative impact of relentless extreme weather with no recovery time. It's about vulnerable infrastructure being stressed beyond its design limits. It's about the human cost of sustained exposure to conditions that push people to their physical and financial limits. Canada has weathered extreme winters before, but what makes this one exceptional is the breadth, the duration, and the intensity all happening simultaneously. Record snowfall in multiple provinces, extreme sustained cold, infrastructure failures, a locked atmospheric pattern, and all of it happening in a country that's warming faster than the global average, creating extremes in both directions. This winter storm tracking into Atlantic Canada today is serious. The cold air following it is dangerous. The pattern driving both is locked in place. And the forecast shows at least 2 to 3 more weeks of this before any meaningful pattern change. Prepare accordingly, take the warnings seriously, and stay safe out there.